Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. I'd like to invite everyone to stand as they're able for the singing of our national anthem. Thank you very much. It's been moved by Councillor Kelly Galloway Seelock that the minutes of the regular meeting held June 25th, 2018, and the special meetings held June 25th and August 13th, 2018, as mailed to the Mayor and Councillors be accepted. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? Councillor Singh.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Item number 2 in the Community Infrastructure Services for 114 and 120 Victoria. My parents own property in very close proximity to that development, so I'll recuse myself from that discussion, as well as item number 2 on the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee. Although at this point I think it is interest in common, but for the time being I will declare a conflict as I have real estate in areas that are designated as established neighborhoods. Okay,
thank you. We will then, any others? No? We'll then move on to the communications, and unless otherwise directed, I'll refer the communications as listed on the agenda. All in favor? Opposed? That is carried. We have one presentation this evening, and it will be made by Michelle Drake. With respect to an award pertaining to Love My Hood. Michelle, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Varanovic and members of Council. It's my pleasure to share with you some exciting news this evening about Love My Hood, Kitchener's Guide to Great Neighborhoods. On July 20th, the Canadian Institute of Planners recognized the 2018 winners of the Awards for Planning Excellence. These awards honor exceptional planning projects judged on their innovation, impact to the profession, implementation potential, and overall presentation. Love My Hood received an award for planning excellence in the new and emerging initiatives category. The following jury statement highlights why Love My Hood was selected as the winner in this category. In creating Love My Hood, the City of Kitchener took an unprecedented approach to traditional municipal planning. A new vision embraced a simple yet innovative principle: residents take the lead and the city supports them along the way. The City of Kitchener has a long history of supporting safe and thriving neighbourhoods. In February 2017, the city launched its first neighbourhood strategy, Love My Hood, Kitchener's Guide to Great Neighbourhoods. Love My Hood is a resident-led, city-supported approach to neighbourhood development that helps people to connect and work together to do great things in their neighbourhood. Love My Hood was developed by a diverse group of volunteers and staff who connected with over 5,600 community members, researching and discussing ideas that are important to Kitchener residents. It became one of the city's largest and most inclusive in community engagement processes. The strategy offers a unique approach to neighbourhood development and includes 18 recommendations or action items that empower residents. These recommendations reflect the vision's 3 core principles: great places, connected people, and working together. The jury was impressed by the unique methodology for this project, using a passionate group of residents and giving them the tools and the permission to engage the community, make decisions, and formulate action items. I'd like to take this opportunity to once again acknowledge and thank the project team, which was made up of residents, community partners, and staff, who collectively spent nearly 1,000 hours guiding the creation of Love My Hood. It is my pleasure and honor this evening to present the Canadian Institute Planners Award for Planning Excellence to the Mayor and Council in recognition of the first neighbourhood strategy, Love My Hood. And if I could ask Mayor Vrbanovic to come forward to receive the award.
Well, thank you very much, Michelle, and thank you to you and to Michael and all the staff and community members who were involved in bringing Love My Hood to fruition. The neighborhood strategy wouldn't have been possible without everybody's efforts, and I know one of the project team members, Melissa Bowman, is here in the audience today as well, so I wanted to acknowledge her in that regard as well. We'll then move on to, Councillor Yanetsky. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mayor, and I also wish to congratulate staff on the hard work and the involvement of the community on that to a well-deserved award. It was an honor to represent Kitchener there at the Planning Institute and pick up the award for the city and bring it back. It was a tough competition amongst numerous groups that had there, and actually there was other awards for different categories as well. But on behalf of the city, I thanked the membership and the organization of CIP on behalf of staff that had done all the hard work. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Yanetsky. Okay, we'll move on to delegations then, and I just want to remind delegations that they have 5 minutes to make their presentation. I do have a delegation here for item B2 on Committee of the Whole, which is the sign variance. Mr. Ezard, is that how you pronounce it? Close enough. Did you want to speak, or did you want to are you just here to answer questions? Okay, it's been moved by Councillor Davies. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Ioannidis. Any discussion? Councillor Fernandez, you have a question? Go ahead.
Yeah, so at the Committee of Adjustment, my understanding is that one of the, I'll wait till you get down, sorry. That one of the comments was that the changing copy sign be held at a 6-minute interval. Now this has been an ongoing issue since I identified it with staff back in February. The lighting of this sign is extremely bright, and I'm very concerned about distracted driving. Do you have a concern with the suggestion that the changing copy remains static for 6 seconds on that sign?
Actually, just to let you know that in the actual bylaw, it's already 6 seconds. So once the old permit was voided by the variance application, we will now end up having to go back for a further application once council hopefully approves it, and then we would have to follow the current guidelines, which, as you probably know, is the 6 seconds.
Okay, so that wasn't in the changing copy portion that I printed out today. So I'm glad to hear that that's going to change, but are you going to the full width of that sign now with the changing copy on both sides or just the one?
No, just the same
Just
sign
one
that's
side.
currently there.
Okay.
We're not changing anything that hasn't been there for, I think it's been 2 years now, almost.
Yeah. I mean, I've received numerous complaints from residents from my area who drive past that sign on a regular basis and find it extremely distracting, so.
We did, I did check with staff prior to my application for variance, and staff has not received any complaints.
They've
about
received
that.
them through me.
No, that's fine. But staff has not received any complaints from anyone, and the only time that a complaint did come in that staff received, it was not for our sign, but a sign that was brand new that was put up across the street that actually doesn't have a light meter, which is sort of standard in the industry, to monitor when sort of daylight happens and nighttime. So.
Okay. Well, I'm pleased to see that the 6-second remaining static is going to happen then. Okay, that's all the concerns I had. Thank you.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? That's been carried, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. We'll now move on to our delegations, and our first delegation is Lorraine Grenier. Welcome, Ms. Grenier.
Well, good evening, Mr. Mayor and Council. Illegal drug injection site inside and outside Victoria Park Washroom and on David Street, Kitchener. The residents of Victoria Park Heritage Community are appealing to this council for assistance. A large number of one-roof attics converge behind the Victoria Park Washroom and inside the facility as well as on David Street. The washroom should be locked until the safety and drug issues are resolved by this council and Waterloo Regional Police, as the public are afraid to go inside this facility. Standing on David Street, you can view a youth climbing a tree and then urinate onto the back of the washroom wall. Another sits on a sleeping bag, a blue rubber tourniquet tied to his arm, preparing to inject illegal drugs. 2 females are smoking crack, maybe meth, using the glass pipes supplied to them by One Roof Shelter. Others lay around 24/7, not sleeping, but passed out cold from alcohol or just too high on drugs to move. The park closes at 11 p.m. The scene as you look around: beer cans, liquor bottles, syringes, alcohol swabs, used condoms, cook pots, saline tubes, food wrappers, and more. Stolen bike parts tossed down the hill behind the washroom where people with shopping carts camp out. Branches snapped off the trees caused by addicts climbing them. The washroom has an ambulance outside, another overdose. Drug dealers behind the washroom on David Street and at the clock tower are selling crystal meth and trading drugs for stolen items such as bikes. According to stats provided by Public Health, Region of Waterloo, February 2018, most commonly injected drugs are crystal meth, 45%. Multiple drug combinations are 15%, and hydros, opioids, 9%. Crystal meth is epidemic. Inside the facility is shameful and not a place for people that frequent the park with children, as drug dealing and using is continuous. Bullets and a magazine were recovered by a park employee inside the washroom. Smashed mirrors, broken sinks, and toilets is common. An infant change table from the family washroom laying in the parking lot. Locking the facility at dusk does not stop this ongoing influx of addicts and drug abuse and crime 24/7. Human waste lay on the grass behind the washroom in the morning, toilet paper tossed around the area. David Street endures loud noise violations, waking residents, auto break-ins, open drug use, the dumping of trash, syringes, and drug para in our park and on our street. Drug addicts threaten the safety of our neighbors and small children, all knowing that they are impervious because the police are so short-staffed. The 4 pillars: enforcement, prevention, treatment, harm reduction. Harm reduction overshadows the other 3 pillars in funding and functionality. Without all 4 pillars operating in unison, the strategy falls apart, as it has already shown disaster. A 5th pillar struggles to be accepted, which is transitional housing. One roof lacks 3 pillars known as wraparound services and provides only harm reduction. As long as supplies are recklessly distributed by one roof, the behavior will not stop on David Street and the Victoria Park washroom and community. The park is too close to the shelter and too convenient when the syringes and the pipes are distributed to the clients. Harm reduction should never be practiced by any facility without wraparound services, all 4 pillars. Removing harm reduction from the shelter will help resolve many of the issues. Any more crime and vandalism to continue at this facility is unacceptable and costly. A proposed SCS on Water Street will not draw these addicts there unless there is something to draw them to, such as supplies. Victoria Park and David Street are just too close to one roof, and Water Street too far to walk to inject and abuse illegal drugs. Drug injection users cannot loiter outside the SCS, but they can sit and lay around Victoria Park and on David Street indefinitely. Public intoxication from alcohol is illegal, but high on crystal meth and heroin in our streets and parks is acceptable? How so? Vandalizing our home has occurred many times, and the drug crime we endure is totally unacceptable. Reckless operation of harm reduction by one roof is destroying the Victoria Park heritage community, the park, and David Street. To call police would mean to call 24/7. We are just trying to live here. Please take this issue seriously and know that public health and safety are at risk. Thank you. I have a petition from the heritage community of Victoria Park that I'd like to present to Mayor Verbanibek and City Council.
Okay, thank you. You can give that to the clerk, Ms. Grenier.
I didn't press my video. What? You did it for me? Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Grenier. Are there any questions for Ms. Grenier? If not, I just want to thank you for coming in. As you know, you also came in and made your presentation at Regional Council. What I can tell you is that our staff, as you know, dialogue with you on a regular basis, and our staff are aware of the concerns that you're raised, and are working together with our bylaw enforcement division, our security division, and Waterloo Regional Police to address any of the concerns that you're speaking of, and will continue to do so.
I'm speaking for the community of Victoria Park.
No, that.
As you will see by that petition.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you coming in this evening. Okay. Our next delegation is James Howe, speaking in favor of item 9A, but I should probably, Councillor Gazzola, I should probably ask you to move and second that item first so we can have it on the agenda before we hear from it. So you moving it, Councillor Gazzola? And who's, Councillor Yanetsky seconding it? Okay, that's great, and it's a resolution. Do you want to just read the operative phrases? Oh, sorry. Thank you.
What I'm asking for here basically is that that we deal with this issue, or send it back to staff to come back on the 20th to find possible funding for land purchases that are required, and that the hopes here are that we have that in place. I will speak to it further when it comes back, but that in so doing and approving this tonight, we can get a bit of more of a head start on this project.
Okay, thank you. So we do have one delegation on this item, and it's Mr. James Howe. Welcome, Mr. Howe.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and members of City Council. I'm glad Councillor Galloway got a chance to make the motion. I wouldn't have wanted to preempt him. I strongly support the motion by Councillor Galloway that directs staff to move forward. Pardon?
Gazzola.
Gazzola, yes. It says Gazzola right here. Okay. I strongly support the motion by Councillor Gazzola that directs staff to move forward on acquiring land needed for a crossing of the LRT tracks for Traynor Vanier residents and to identify a source to fund the purchase. Why? Quite simply, this crossing should already be in place. Or at the very least, project planning should be at a much more advanced stage. This crossing is a vital piece of infrastructure for this neighborhood, where many people get around by foot, on bikes, and by using public transit. They can see a grocery store, restaurants, and a bank that were all easily accessible. But since the first fence went up along the LRT tracks in July 2016, they have been expected to walk a considerable distance to these destinations, or use a taxi, or take one or more long bus rides. Instead, they have been using makeshift crossings. Soon, the trains will start running. Indeed, they should be already. Yet more than 2 years later, there is no firm plan, timeline, or funding in place. So, residents organized a rally for July 14th because the best case scenario was for a crossing to be built in July 2019. They needed to make their case once again. It attracted plenty of media attention and got results. Even before the rally happened, the mayor arranged for the CIOs of the city and the region of Waterloo to move this project forward with an anticipated construction date of early spring 2019. And now you have before you a motion to move ahead on critical steps that should have already been accomplished. So please, do your part to expedite this project. Move the crossing forward for Paul Metzger, Brenda Dreesen, and Sam Kaminga, who's here this evening, who have seen their neighbors struggling and have been advocating for a proper crossing since well before the first fence went up. Move it forward for the 3 teenage girls I saw crossing the tracks on Friday afternoon. Move it forward for the mother and her young son who happened to cross the tracks during the rally carrying bags of groceries. Move it forward for the woman who told me she was concerned about her safety if there was no crossing and she needed to use an unlit path after dark, especially in the winter. She said she just wouldn't do it. Move the crossing forward for these people and their neighbors who cross the tracks hundreds of times a day, despite the lack of a proper, safe crossing. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions for Mr. Howe? Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Thanks for coming in, James. Just one question. I completely agree, and thanks for putting a human face on some of the issues we're facing there. But I know that you're knowledgeable about how government works, so I guess my question to you would be, who do you think is most responsible for this error and who should be paying for it?
I think there's a... I'm not familiar with all the details on how the region and the city split their responsibility. I certainly would have expected the region to take more of a leading role in this project, as the LRT is a regional project, and the mistake was made in that project. But I know that the city also has some role in this.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Those are all the questions we have. Thank you very much, James, for coming in. Councillor Gazzola, did you want to make some comments as the mover? Go ahead.
Yeah, I want to provide a little more information. And actually, Council has been provided with some good information from our staff over the past several months. It's not, this has been a work in progress. There were 2 public meetings. I forget when the first one was, but the second one was last December. The first one dealt with the issue that something had been missed, and discussion with the residents as to what could be done about it. And staff went away and worked very closely with the region, and then came back in December of last year with some plans, some concepts to try to get the buy-in of the community, and they were very successful in doing that. Now, just an explanation. I don't want to point fingers. We won't accomplish anything by pointing fingers at ourselves, at the region, or what have you. I mean, what happened here? This used to be a hydro right-of-way that was wide open, that really was made up of 1,000 paths. You just crossed in over to the fairway area wherever you wanted. There was no trailway or path works that would have been picked up when the planners for the LRT were going through the process. Having said that, there's no question that everyone realizes that it is something that has to be corrected, and the taxpayer is going to have to pay for it. And it's a question of whether it's a regional pocket, it's a city pocket. I know that there has been a lot of work done. I know that the regional staff are looking to senior levels of government for some assistance, and hopefully there will be funding coming there. Where it sits now is that the region have been working with our staff, and at the staff level, the region have hired consultants to do the design and engineering work on a crosswalk. And I should mention that in preparing for the crosswalk, an overhead was not, they were not able to do that. That gets into conflicts with Hydro One and could prolong the issue forever. Going in an underpath, there are high tension wires there, so that was out of the question. So what we have to end up with is an at-grade level crossing. And there are a lot of, I'm a bean counter, not an engineer, but they explain there are a lot of complexity with this whole issue, that it's the end of the line, and at the end of the line they go on to automatic pilot control or something. The driver of the LRT vehicle does not have control, so it's run automatically, and because of that they have to have a set of crossing gates that work mechanically and what have you. So the engineering is quite complex. What I'm now, it's a collaboration with ourselves in the region, and I understand that we were to try to acquire, do the land acquisition. The region would look after the design and engineering, and eventually the construction would take place. I know that staff had said, well, we want to deal with this. We want to prepare an issue paper in our normal budget process, which is the normal process in this. And after that, they would come up with, I'm sure with the budget paper, some funding. What I'm trying to do here is to try to have, get the approval to move ahead with this. And I'm asking that we give staff until our next meeting some opportunity to look at some possible sources of funding that we may have in some surplus funds in some of our accounts. And the idea is that if the engineering is completed later this fall, that we will have the land possibly and available so that construction could take place immediately. So in doing all of that, if we're fortunate in moving along this pathway, I believe we could save 6 to 8 months in getting something that has to be put in place. We really have no choice. And so this is an attempt just to get things in place so that we can move faster when all the engineering is done. And in closing, I do want to thank both regional staff and our local staff, who, especially Mr. Edmund, Mr. Concrete, who have done a tremendous amount of work and have been working on this for a long time. So basically, it's been the last 6 to 8 months now to get to this point. So I would ask that everyone support this, and at the time I would like a recorded vote. Thank you.
Thanks. And Councillor Gazzola, to be clear then, you're asking for this to come back not to council on September 10th, but to committee day on September 10th.
I thought the sooner the better.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Councillor Yanetsky.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm prepared, as I seconded the motion, I'm prepared to support this objective that's tabled here before us, because I think it's a move in the right direction to address the issues with the residents of Vanier and Traynor. And I know dollars and cents is an issue as well as to where the money's going to come from, because the city's got to work with the region and try to provide land as well as the required crossings, etc. However, I also want to add that I'd like to provide the city and the region and to Councillor Gazzola some funding that's coming my way of the proposed pedestrian crossing over Conestoga Parkway that has been presented this past year. I'm not in favor of having.
Councillor Yanetsky, in all due respect, that's a regional decision. The region's decided that already. It has nothing to do with this issue. And so stay focused on this issue, and if you want to comment on this, that's fine. But we're not going to debate a regional decision around a different bridge.
Well, I can appreciate that. I want to debate. I just want to point out that we don't want the bridge.
Okay, that might be your opinion. Let's focus on this bridge, or on this crossing.
Sorry,
okay?
on this crossing. Well, I'm prepared to support the crossing.
Thank you.
And happy to give some money too.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Thank you, and I'm not sure who to ask this question of, but the clause that concerns me the most is this third from the bottom, the first therefore, that says council immediately approve the land acquisition required to facilitate the pedestrian crossing. In these funding options, I want to be clear that the City of Kitchener is into consideration as one of the funding options, and who do I get to answer that question?
I think staff can, but I'm not sure you're going to necessarily like the answer.
Okay, well then I want to hear it.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, so typically walkways are owned by and operated by the City of Kitchener. So the typical process would be we acquire the walkway, but the LRT crossing and all the signals associated with that would be the responsibility of the region.
Okay, so are you saying then, I can accept that if that's the historical practice, but are you saying that in the entire LRT project, there was a situation where part of that budget, the land was expropriated for a pathway that was funded and paid for by the region?
Through the mayor, I'm not aware of a specific instance of that. I know there were some existing walkways that the signals were put in because there was an existing walkway adjacent to the LRT track, so they had paid for the signals as part of that original contract because the walkway was existing.
Okay, I'll put it another way then. Cutting two cities in half, there must have been several other scenarios where a walkway was blocked off. Did the City of Kitchener, or was the City of Kitchener required to expropriate any lands that you're aware of?
Through the mayor, I'm not aware of the city acquiring any lands associated with the LRT construction at the time.
Okay. So my problem I have here is that, number one, I have no idea what the potential costs are for the City of Kitchener. Number two, the worst negotiating position you can possibly be in is telling a private landowner we need your land and then going to try and negotiate with them. So there's no way I can approve this unless I have an idea of what the potential cost implications might be coming back to the City of Kitchener. So we can defer it, I would say, if staff wants to get more, and I'm just putting this out there so there can be discussion. I'm happy to defer this decision until September 10th, and then staff can come back, we can have an in-caucus discussion. But until then, this issue, well, I'll save my comments for my comments.
Well, I think the intent, and correct me if I'm wrong, Councillor Gazzola, your intent here is really to have staff come back with information on the 10th around possible acquisition strategies, costs, and so on. Not to really approve an acquisition today.
No, that's true. When I first looked at it, I would have liked to have seen it approved because I firmly believe it's something that has to be done. And I softened it up to say, okay, staff will have an opportunity to come back with some suggestions, and at which point the final decision would be made.
So can I suggest, Councillor Gazzola, that maybe, and this may help, because you're really speaking to paragraphs 2 and 3. If you just add the words "in principle" to paragraph 1, which says we're moving towards an acquisition in principle, subject to those other 2 paragraphs.
If that's what it takes, I will gladly put those words in.
Okay. I think that speaks to your concern, Councillor Davey. Okay. Councillor Ioannidis, you're next.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. In the past, when we deal with land acquisitions, is it a policy of the city to forecast of properties that we're going to acquire?
On that, there's been no indication of properties that has not been put forward.
Okay.
Okay,
I have the floor.
Okay, yeah, Councillor Gazzola, staff will answer the question. Thanks. Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, so when we started this project as an environmental assessment process, because we were looking at bridges and tunnels, which do trigger an environmental assessment. As part of that process, typically locations or preferred alternatives are identified. So we have identified 2 locations that are feasible. We did identify a preliminary preferred location, which is in behind the part source. There's a grass strip in there. But we do have a secondary location as well that was identified at the public meeting. So the advantage is there are 2 feasible locations that would work, which put us in a better situation as sort of a sole acquisition of one property.
Okay, so those locations, have we already negotiated with the landowners?
Through the mayor, we have not negotiated. We did reach out to them and make contact to see if there was a willingness to enter into negotiations.
Okay, so by really announcing the locations that we want, are we not inflating the price?
Through the mayor, so we would go through a typical process of land acquisition where we would look at comparable properties and land values, and if it's a willing buyer, willing seller situation, we would likely be able to negotiate a relatively fair price for those properties.
Okay, and my last question is, how did this get missed?
Through the mayor, it depends on what scale you look back on, but when these properties were first developed back in, I think it was the 50s or 60s, there was a walkway that was put in on the residential side, but there was never any that was put in in the land use plan on the commercial side of the property. So I would say that probably started the issue, and then the need wasn't fully articulated until we started the pedestrian study because, as was mentioned earlier, there was a number of crossing points, so quantifying how many crossings were happening was part of this study that helped identify the need.
Okay, so in other words, when the LRT was being proposed, which was at least 10 years ago, why wasn't this not caught 10 years ago, and why is this bringing to our attention today?
So through the mayor, I was not at the city at that time, but I do believe there was a number of issues that were flagged, and some did progress and some didn't through the whole process of the LRT.
I think, in fairness, and this has been articulated, Councillor Ioannidis, is that this was not a regular crossway, one that's officially on plans that's being used, and as such, it got missed in the process. And should the region have caught that? Should the city have caught that? I think Councillor Gazzola is right. I mean, okay. It doesn't matter. We have a neighborhood. We have a neighborhood that's impacted here, and we need to fix the problem.
I could accept that, but if I was in that area, I would know exactly what would be going on. So to come at this last moment to me, someone's not doing their job.
Councillor Etherington.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I understand it. There's an impossible answer to this, but I don't understand it. To Mr. Redmond, what would be the ballpark cost of what we're being asked to consider? Do you have any idea?
Mr. Reedman, is that something you can answer, or is that something that has to wait till the 10th?
Through the mayor, I do have a rough estimate. However, land acquisition disposition is subject to a caucus discussion. So if council would like to know that today, we would have to enter into caucus.
Well, it's being discussed in open council at the moment. You can't give us a rough figure on what it would cost?
Well, I think, as you know, Councillor Etherington, we don't negotiate in public. We always deal with that in caucus.
Well, then maybe we should have done that before it came into open council, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I think the intent was that this would come back on the 10th. So if council gave this direction, presumably there would be a caucus session before the 10th that would have that information prior to us discuss it in public then.
Okay.
Councillor Singh.
Well, Mr. Mayor, that's my concern as well, and I share the issues already laid out by Councillor Davey and Ioannidis. Through this discussion, staff have already, I think, let out more information that was necessary. The preference should have been that this item should have been brought through an in-camera process so we could have asked the necessary questions. Staff have already said there's 2 spots and they're in the process of negotiating.
So, Councillor Singh, just to clarify before you continue, this is going through an EA process, which involves public meetings, which meant that those sites, as Mr. Reedman explained, and those locations have already been talked about publicly, and the community has responded to it. So the locations are public. That's not secret, but land valuation and so on and negotiating strategies are a matter of caucus.
So, and that's why I questioned the wording of the motion, and I think you have added some suggestions. But Councillor Gazzola is saying Council immediately approve the land acquisition required. Again, does it mean those 2 sites only, or is he recommending if those involved are not agreeable in selling and the prices involved, are we looking at other spots? So my concern is the wording of immediate. In the first paragraph, therefore be resolved, and then later in the last one, similar, that possible immediate funding options. So I understand the urgency of it, or the need in the neighborhood for this, but my concern is the timing and the quickness of what's being required. Are you comfortable with watering down some of the wording as already suggested? I would prefer that immediate in the first paragraph be taken out, where it says therefore be it resolved, council immediately approve. Immediate taken there, and at the last paragraph brought back a report in September council meeting with possible funding options and immediate taken out as well. The wording the way it stands seems to tie council to this decision, and I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not negating the need, but I would need to know what that cost to the taxpayers would be.
Councillor Schneider.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wonder if staff might be able to comment on if this crossing would be something that might qualify for our sponsorship and naming rights program, which could generate some goodwill for a company and provide some tax relief.
We can call it the Golden Arches.
Yeah.
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, so I don't know if it would fall typically under the sponsorship approach. So most walkways, I don't think would be classified as that. Maybe some of our more significant trails could, but I think neighborhood connection walkways likely wouldn't fall within that program. We have been working with the region though on other potential funding sources. So there's the PTIF funding, which is regional funding. It's a transit fund. So we're looking at all options for those types of opportunities as well.
Okay, I just wonder if, in this case, because it is a big need, if we might want to consider making, if we could even make an exception to for something like this in this particular instance. or consider. You don't need to answer tonight, but...
Through the mayor, so if we're bringing back a report, we can touch on that as a potential option.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. The wording that you had suggested, Mayor Verbanovic, wasn't clear to me, and I'm just wondering if it's helpful. We have 3 clauses. I would like to suggest that we just strike the first clause of the 3 active clauses and just vote on the 2 remaining ones. So it's a friendly amendment.
We typically don't take friendly amendments, but Councillor Gazzola's in the queue, so I will let him decide. If not, then you're certainly free to move it as an amendment, and I'll ask you to write it out then. But in the interest of moving things along, I'll see if he wants to adjust his motion.
Yeah, no. When you had, Mr. Mayor, you had rightfully indicated the words "in principle," and when we had indicated that we would have staff come back in September at our September meeting, I just assumed that until we had the funding suggested and approved, that we wouldn't be going out and buying the land. I mean, there's no easy way of saying this. In the fullness of time, we're going to have to buy some land. Okay, well, that has to happen. Hopefully before something detrimental happens. So I'm a bit taken aback here by what's happening here. Earlier this year, we were talking about closing off skating ponds, and we were talking, there was so much concern around this horseshoe about the safety of people on skating rinks that, and here, I attended the rally. I walked across, I illegally walked across the tracks too, and believe me, it's a dangerous thing to do. But let's face it, the world is full of human beings, and we want to get from A to B. We're gonna get there the shortest way, and the younger the person involved, the more immortal they feel they are, and they're going to try. So I'm just trying to do something here. Before we have a tragedy. So I'm not trying to push anything through. So I would again ask you to. So does that, Councillor Marsh? Does that explain? Yeah.
Councillor Davey.
So I'm comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. With the understanding that the motion we're voting on now does strike the first of 3 clauses, the first therefore clause, I will support it. But I want to, with the caveat that I need to hear some very strong rationale as to why the City of Kitchener should be funding the acquisition. And it's not lost to me that the big picture is we have a whole bunch of people that don't care about whether it's the region's jurisdiction or the city's jurisdiction. They just want to be able to cross the tracks, and right now we're failing them. So I want to do everything we can to make sure that they can cross the tracks as quickly as possible. At the same time, it's our responsibility at this lower tier level. We always we're fighting over hundreds of dollars sometimes at budget time. We need to make sure that if we're on the hook for this, it's because we deserve to be on the hook for this. And right now, I don't see that. I mean, a mistake was made, and everybody makes mistakes. I have no problem with that. But I think the body that's most responsible for missing this and should be the one that picks up the tab.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah. So wherever the responsibility lies, I think the most important point here is that there are people who are at risk every single day who are crossing those tracks. And as representatives of this community, I think that is where we need to put our concerns, and that's where we need to put our focus. Staff, both City of Kitchener and regional staff, as well as the mayor, have been working on trying to get something to happen. The ward councillor has been, and we've heard from another citizen who doesn't live in the ward, but who is very keen on seeing this happen for the safety of people to cross. Many of those people don't have vehicles, and this is the way they get their everyday needs. So let's push forward and forget about blaming and make sure that something happens for the safety of families, young children, and seniors.
Councillor Singh.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. So with, that's a good suggestion by Councillor Marsh with the first paragraph, for the therefore be it resolved, and for that being stricken out, I can see supporting that, as that was my major concern. That seems to be that we're rushing. I think this places allows staff to do the necessary due diligence, and I think the concerns raised around the horseshoe does not speak to lack of interest of concern for safety of our residents in those neighborhoods, but it's more of giving caution and requiring that we follow the already placed rules for land acquisition and disposition, and I think that's what's been raised, and that would be encouraged going forward as well.
Okay, just to be clear, Councillor Gazzola, I didn't hear you say that you're striking that first clause. That was Councillor Marsh's suggestion, and she can move that amendment if she wants. What I heard you say is that you were going with the words, therefore be it resolved that Council approve in principle the land acquisition required to facilitate the pedestrian crossing. So just want to be clear, are you... Oh, sorry, your mic's not on. Go ahead.
Yeah, to me, the fact that really we're asking for it to come back at our September meeting really is the protection that we're not going to go out tonight and acquire the land. So, but I think we have to approve in principle that we're going to acquire land sooner or later. That's sort of understood, but. I don't know if striking that out completely satisfies everyone. I don't see it making any difference, quite frankly.
I would tend to agree with you if the words in principle are there. Councillor Etherington.
I was going to say that I'd feel much more comfortable with Councillor Marsh's suggestion that first paragraph come out. It doesn't make any difference anyway. We're going to be having a staff report. That report would indicate where we're going, how much we're going to spend. If we're going to spend, I can't see the point of that, committing this council to what it's committing us to before we even talk about it in caucus.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Galloway-Sealock, you haven't spoken yet. You can go next.
I just want to say, at the end of the day, we have to do this. There's no doubt in my mind that it needs to be done. So whether or not we strike the first clause or not doesn't make a difference to me. I just know at the end of the day it has to be completed. It was missed, it was an error, and we need to do this for the community. I know that at the right time we'll figure out with the region or us who needs to pay for it, but I think there's going to have to be a partnership and a collaboration there. And so I am happy to support the motion as is.
Councillor Marsh.
So just to make sure that something passes tonight, what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring forward that amendment because actually I can live with either one, but I can hear from some of my colleagues that they're much more comfortable with the first of 3 active paragraphs be stricken, and I for one am more comfortable with it as well that way because we're not agreeing to acquire land outright without even knowing additional parameters. I know that at the end of the day that will have to happen, but let's just do this in the proper format. So that's why I'm bringing forward that amendment.
Okay, do we have a seconder? Councillor Davey. Okay. Councillor Schneider, you haven't spoken yet.
Thank you. Just the comment. I mean, I agree. This is something that has to be done. Years ago, I lived in that neighborhood, and what is now the Talese store. It used to be a Nectals grocery store, so there was easy walkability for neighbors in that area. Now there's no grocery store there, and they do need to get to the facilities and services that need to get to, and they need to get there safely. We will have to purchase land for this, and I do agree with Councillor Zola that the sooner we can have things in place and secure the land and build the crossing, then the better.
Councillor Ioannidis.
Thank you, Mayor Urbanovic. With the light of Councillor Lorish bringing forward that amendment, I will support the amendment. If that doesn't fail, I won't be supporting the main motion. And we all recognize that there is a need here, and something was missed. But at the same time, everybody here recognized that there was something there, but nobody did nothing. And that's where my concern is. Why is this being brought now at the 11th hour is, to me, surprising.
Councillor Davey.
I know I already commented, just one bit of clarification. The reason I'm going to support the amendment to strike it is very clear. That clause by itself indicates the City of Kitchener, this council, is approving the acquisition, whereas striking that out, just the second part, indicates that we're going to coordinate with the region. So I think that's a very important distinction at this point.
Councillor Singh.
So, Mr. Mayor, if the amendment fails, I request that the three resolutions be voted separately of Councillor Gazzola's motion. If the amendment fails.
I mean, to be honest with you, I'm not sure that breaking it apart would make sense then, because the amendment is in effect breaking it apart. So if the amendment fails...
So we're voting for the same thing again?
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
So I will be taking the amendment first. I will speak to it. I will support the motion as it is with the wording in principle. That gives me the comfort that we need. It doesn't say that we're necessarily going to pay for it all, the region's going to pay for it all, or it's going to be some combination of it, just saying that we as a council approve a land acquisition in principle. Listen, I've been out at the location, as has Councillor Gazzola. I've been out there with Sam and James and the other residents, and we've seen what the reality is out there. The reality is that at the worst point, people need to walk a kilometer to try to cross the road. That's not realistic, and so we need to fix this problem. I get October 22nd is not that far, and everybody wants to play around with words and stuff a little bit right now. But the point is, we got to do the right thing on this issue. And I think this motion is the right thing, with a report coming back so that we can do what we need to do once we have the full information and can make a decision at that point in time. So I will deal with Councillor Marsh's amendment first, which is to remove the first clause. Okay. Those in favor? Those opposed? The amendment does not carry, so we'll now deal with the original motion with the changed wording that says in principle, and a recorded vote again. Those in favor? Those opposed? And that motion does carry. Thank you for coming in today. We'll now go to two items that notice has been provided for with respect to tonight's meeting. Notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against a bylaw to name a private road in a multi-residential development at 70 Watermill Street as Waterbrook Lane, listed as items 11E and 14E. Is anybody here with respect to the street naming? Is anybody here with respect to the Waterbrook Lane street naming? And going one last time, is anybody here with respect to the Waterbrook Lane street naming? There is not. Mr. Clerk, I guess those are we just deal with those at bylaw time then? Yep, okay. Then we'll go to the item C. Notice has been given for any member of the public to speak for or against the bylaw to name a private road in a multi-residential development at 1000 Lackner Boulevard as Lackner Place, listed as items 11F and 14F in the bylaws. Is anyone, Sam and gang, I think we have some media folks that want to talk to you before you run out. Is anybody here with respect to the Lackner Place naming? Anybody here with respect to the Lackner Place naming? And finally, is there anyone here with respect to the Lackner Place naming? Okay, if not, we will deal with those at the time of bylaws. We'll now move on to the reports of committees. Community Infrastructure Services, Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yes, item number 1 through 7 is approved by myself and seconded by Councillor Marsh, with the noted conflict on number 2 for Councillor Singh. And there's one change on number 6. It's paragraph number 4. It says 2 new locations be referred to the 2019 budget. It should say 3 new locations, and that the approximate value would be $22,500 as opposed to 15. This was how it was written in the report, but the resolution did not reflect what was in the report. So, okay. And then I also have personally an additional motion for number 6.
So an amendment to number 6?
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll come back to, actually, no, why don't you bring that forward now?
Yeah, I'm actually going to, Jeff, I'm going to give you a different one. I made a couple changes. It's nothing significant, but I brought this up at the committee meeting and asked staff to report back with respect to the potential for a crossing guard at the corner of at the roundabout at Fisher-Hellman Road and Seabrook Drive. It's come back, they've spoken with the region, and they don't anticipate there's going to be a lot of pedestrians, but there's still a large concern in the community with respect to the grade 7s and 8s having to cross that roundabout. We've already had a tragedy at that roundabout with someone who was just working at the side of the road, and so it's definitely of concern to a lot of parents in this area. So what I'm asking for in the first clause, and I believe transportation staff, some of the changes are because of what transportation staff has asked me to change. So the first clause is with respect to staff being on site at the roundabout for the first week of school, and that staff complete a pedestrian count during this week, because I believe the number that the region's coming up with isn't significant enough. The third clause is that if staff deem it appropriate because of the pedestrian counts and or the conditions of the crossing, that a crossing guard be installed as soon as possible. Here's a couple of the changes. And that city and region staff look at installing school crossing signs on Fisher-Hellman Road and Seabrook Drive to advise the drivers of the new crossing. And if a crossing guard isn't to be put into place, that the city and region staff look at possibly trimming back some of the vegetation in the center of the roundabout to improve visibility.
Okay, so this is your amendment to add on to number 6. Is there a seconder? Is there a seconded by Councillor Ioannidis? Okay. I will deal with that then later on. Councillor Gazzola.
I just wanted to deal with number 7 separately.
Okay, I will come back to that then. Councillor Marsh. Oh, Councillor Fernandez, sorry, you were next.
Yeah, just a couple questions about this motion by Councillor Galloway Seelock. Is this sort of a similar situation as to what we're seeing at the block line roundabout, that we provide the crossing guards, but that the cost is borne by us or by the region on this?
Councillor Galloway-Seelock.
I actually think staff might be better to answer that question, but this is a similar approach that was taken at the Huron and Strasbourg Road roundabout for the high school, where we had staff on site for the first week, and we also did a lot of education with the students. So this is kind of a similar approach to that. And then I don't know, I think the region has said no, they won't pay for it because they don't think it's warranted. So Mr. Reedman can answer that.
Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor, so we did consult with the region on providing a crossing guard at this location, and because it does not meet the warrant, they have not offered to pay for a crossing guard. So if one was installed here, it would be at the city's cost at this point in time.
Okay. And this is only for the school is only servicing grade 7 and 8s?
Go. You didn't click. Go ahead.
The school is kindergarten to grade 8, but it's only the 7s and 8s who went to Jean Steckley that now have to go to Janet Metcalf because of the overcrowding in Jean Steckley. And so this is new for this year, and it's only supposed to be for 2 years because they're building another school at Tartan Avenue, and then everyone will go there instead and not have to cross the roundabout.
Okay, thanks for the clarification.
Councillor Marsh.
Yeah, just a question about the last clause. I don't understand why we wouldn't cut back vegetation regardless of whether or not we're able to install a crossing guard. Because even if there were a crossing guard there during school, back to school crossing times, we still need to keep all of our roundabouts safe for pedestrians regardless of when they're crossing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Davey?
Thank you. I don't have a problem with this, but I need to ask the question. Supposing that staff ultimately decides that a crossing guard is going here, like the response I always give members of the community is that it's fair, equitable, scientific based. This wouldn't be jumping a queue for an intersection somewhere else in the city that might need it more. I need staff's confirmation of that.
Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor, so typically staff undertake a warrant process for all locations in the city and bring back a comprehensive report. So we would attempt to endeavor to do the same here to make sure that council has an understanding of what the needs are across all locations.
That's fair. Thank you.
Okay. No other questions or comments? So I will deal with number 2 first, which Councillor Singh has a conflict on. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Then I'll deal with 1, 3, 4, and 5 next. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Then number 7, Councillor Gazzola. Did you want?
I have a question. Last 2 weeks ago when we discussed this in committee, I asked staff if they could give us an update on the total picture for the LED lighting system, which they did. They sent us out a memo, but I think it's a good news story that I would just like to ask Mr. Reedman. Originally, we were looking at a payback period of 8 some years, and now there's quite an adjustment. Can you just briefly explain the difference and what the payback period now is?
Mr. Reedman.
Through the mayor, the payback period went from 8.3 years in the original estimate to 5.5 years. And the reason for that is we looked at a region-wide contract rather than the City of Kitchener going alone for the LED retrofit. Plus, the technology has been going down in price over time. So from our original estimate to when we tendered, those two factors resulted in a savings of approximately $3 million, as well as taking out ornamental lighting because the energy savings aren't as good on LEDs for those. So we are waiting to see what that looks like. And then we also did not include the hydro incentive at the time of the original estimate because we weren't sure what that incentive would look like. So we wanted to do sort of a worst case scenario when we were estimating our budget. And that resulted in an additional savings of about $640,000.
So the bottom line is that it's not really hitting our taxpayers at all, and it'll be all paid for within within 6 years now.
Through the mayor, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll now deal with number 7. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And now we'll come to number 6. I'll deal with the amendment first. Sure. Recorded vote has been called. And that's carried unanimously. I'll deal with the balance of number 6 as amended. All those in favor? Opposed? That too is carried unanimously. We'll move on to planning and strategic initiatives. Who's bringing that forward? Councillor Ioannidis? Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Verbanovic. It's been moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Dave Schneider that the report of the Planning and Strategic Initiatives Committee be adopted from items 1 to 2.
Okay, thank you. And it's been asked that we deal with number 2 separately because of a conflict. So I'll deal with that one first. All those in favor? Opposed? With the noted conflict, that's carried. And item number 1, all those in favor? Opposed? That is carried as well. We'll now move on to unfinished business. New business. We've already dealt with Councillor Gazzola's report. There being none, Regional Council update, I guess 2 things. Number 1, and the Council has received an email from our staff informing you with an update that Regional Council has put on hold the whole issue of safe consumption sites until we get an indication from the province as to the direction that they'll be going. The province has suggested that they expect to report back by the end of September, but when any decision will be coming forward, we're not sure. So we'll see what happens in that regard. The second point that I'll just make is several of us, including Councillors Gazzola and Yanetsky, myself, and Mr. Chapman and Grivasek were in attendance at AMO. We did have several meetings with new ministers and parliamentary assistants, including the Minister for I was going to say local government, but for Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, the Minister responsible for social services. We met with the parliamentary assistant for economic development. All the titles are new, so I don't have all the current titles top of mind, and several others. I would say overall we had a good round of initial meetings with them, putting forward the priorities of both the city and the region. In many of the meetings, we either had our regional partners with us or our corridor partners for the meetings in relation to both Two-Way Aldego and high-speed rail. I think it's fair to say that most things, while I think if they weren't aware of what our priorities were prior to the meetings, they certainly were afterwards. Many of them were aware of our transportation priorities, particularly as they relate to Two-Way Aldego and high-speed rail. But anything in terms of commitments and timing is really subject to the financial reviews that they're presently undertaking. So the dialogue on all those issues will no doubt continue in the weeks and months ahead, including their consultation on the cannabis issue. So with that, we'll move to questions and answers, if there are any. Councillor Davey.
Thank you. Just wanted to give staff a heads up. On behalf of Councillor Marsh and myself, actually, we're both impacted by the closure of the Victoria Street Bridge, and realizing it's a provincial project and a regional road, still it affects the businesses and commuters. So I think we're most of the way through that project. I was wondering if we can get an update in terms of completion. Have there been any holdups or problems?
Do you looking for an answer now or afterward? Now, if we have one, okay, yes. Mr. Reedman?
Through the mayor. So the original reopening was scheduled for November 18th. The project is about 3 days behind schedule at this point in time, so generally it's on track. So I would say mid to late November is when Victoria Street is scheduled to reopen.
I would be very happy with 3 days, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. I'm sure, as will many of the drivers that rely on that road every day. Okay, so if there aren't any others, we will move on to, where'd my other, there we go, to the bylaws. It's been moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by, oh, okay, I'll come to you for those in a second. It's been moved by Councillor Davies, seconded by Councillor Singh, that leave be given the mover and seconder to introduce the bylaws listed on the agenda, and that the same be taken as read a first time and stand referred to the committee of the whole. But before we deal with them, there are 4 late starters. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We do have the 4 late starters, one emanating from CIS. That would be a zone change application for 114 to 120 Victoria Street South, and 3 bylaws coming from the PSIC report, and that's an OPA and a zone change amendment for 1054 and 1070 Hidden Valley Road, and finally a zone change amendment for Reed's recommendations. Thank you.
Okay, so all those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Callie Galloway Seelock. The Council resolve itself into Committee of the Whole. All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Councillor Galloway Seelock.
Yes, can I get a mover for the second reading of the bylaws? Moved by Councillor Ioannidis. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We'll start with tenders. Tender number 1. Does anybody have any questions on tender number 1? Councillor Gazzola?
No, just a quick question. Is that cost we're dealing with just for the plow and that on the truck? That doesn't include the cost of the truck? It does? No, okay. It's a substantial amount of money. I'm not sure people are aware as to what they cost.
Mr. Lautenbach?
Yes, through the chair, what this tender is related to is just the snow removal equipment that goes on the truck itself.
Okay. Those in favor? I guess I didn't have anyone move those, did I? Moved by Mayor Verbanovic. So number 1, all in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 2, this question, Councillor Ioannidis.
Yeah, I just want to know, in the report it says we're looking at completion sometime in, where is it now? October. Are we still on schedule for that?
Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, it's my understanding that with approving the tender that we will still be on track to complete by the time frame indicated.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Yunetsky?
Yeah, this particular bridge, item number 2 here, talks about the Sandrock Greenway pedestrian bridge. I'm not sure where it is, because there's no specific location whereby you go to the next report dealing with stormwater management is specifically identified. So could somebody tell me where this is located in the Sandrock Greenway? Like between what streets sort of thing?
Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, the bridge connects West Heights Drive with Brookside Crescent. West Heights Drive and Brookside Crescent.
Okay, that's been moved. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Number 3, the retrofit, the Stormwater Management Facility 21. Any questions? Councillor Fernandez?
Yes, so there's a deficit in this budget, and all of the stormwater management, all this work is the price seems to be escalating each time. Where is the deficit coming out of it? Is it coming out of the stormwater management fee budget?
Mr. Lautenbach?
That is correct. The stormwater utility budget, there's an account, a general provision account that covers off this type of work, and the balance on the account currently is $1.7 million. So there is sufficient funding in that account to cover off the deficit from this project, with the remaining funds that are in that account to address the department's needs for stormwater.
Okay. I just more of a comment, but as we go through all of these stormwater management pond cleanups and all the work that's going on, my concern is that they keep escalating in price and that we're over budget. I think this is the second one I've seen that's over budget. My hope is that we are able to get a handle on that. I mean, this is important work. It helps with our storms and helps with our flooding, but I just worry that we're starting to escalate the prices or that the tenders are coming in higher than they should.
All right, those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And the last tender, the ice rink conversion cover. Councillor Griswold, you have questions?
Yeah, I'd like to know what a conversion cover is. What are we dealing with? And we're replacing one that's been there for 22 years?
Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, my understanding of what the cover is for converting the ice to multi-purpose. So when there's something that takes place, an event that takes place on the ice, it's the cover that actually goes on the ice to protect the ice for that type of event.
Okay. So the other one is worn, is it? It's okay. So it's okay. I understand now. I just wasn't sure. I guess everybody else knew.
Councillor Yunetsky?
That was my same question.
Okay. Councillor Schneider?
Yeah, just a quick question on that. I noticed that we had a local company, Athletic Sports Systems, and well, their tender was a little bit higher than the Cover Master. Do we give consideration to local companies in a tender if something would be close, or were there other factors that determined the selection?
Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, we're not able to provide local preference in terms of the competitive process. Certainly based on the specs, the reason why that company did not wasn't recommended for award was because it didn't meet the requirements of the 10-year warranty for the cover. So for that reason, they were not the one that we went ahead with.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's no further questions. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. That's all the tenders. We've dealt with 2. Number 3 is moved by Mayor Verbanovic. That's the Compass Kitchener terms of reference. Councillor Marsh?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. It's regarding number C on page 3-7, which is one of the responsibilities of Compass Kitchener is to develop, the new wording is to develop evaluation criteria in collaboration with staff reflective of the community's priorities and monitoring the city's performance against goals included in the strategic plan for the city of Kitchener. And I just wanted to ask for clarification about whether or not there might be some discussion around what will Compass Kitchener be looking at? Will they be looking at only those community priorities that happen to be embedded into our final strategic plan that has additional inputs, or will we be able to allow the new Compass Kitchener members to look at deciding how they're going to measure our success?
So as it stands now, there isn't a system in place for evaluation. So the first step is to look at how Compass Kitchener is going to embark on evaluation on an ongoing basis. In the second part of your question, the idea would be that once Council approves the strategic plan, if you recall from the presentation earlier, the Compass suggested community priorities are very broad: social, economic, environmental, and organizational excellence. So it would be hard to anticipate that anything coming out of the strategic plan wouldn't fit into one of those community priorities. So I don't think we'll have a situation where they wouldn't be making some kind of reference to the community priorities.
Okay. I think it's true that it is broad and that anything can fit in those categories. I think that the details of whether or not Compass Kitchener is going to be giving us a report card on what we what the community said they want versus is to me a little detail that I'd like us to perhaps, I just want to flag that as something that we look at when we are finalizing the plan in the new term of council.
And I'll take that back to the committee in terms of drafting up the evaluation criteria.
Thank you.
All right, there's no further questions. It's been moved by the mayor. Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Item number 4 is a noise exemption for the German Festival, moved by Councillor Fernandez. I don't see any questions. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. Dealing with delegation of signing authority for the Ministry of Transportation agreement. Someone want to move that? Moved by Councillor Davey. Are there any questions? Councillor Gazzola?
No, I have a question on the next, sorry.
Sorry, on the, for information items?
Yeah, sorry, so
Okay.
go ahead with...
No questions on the signing authority? Those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. We have the 4 information items, Mr. Clerk. Do I need, because they're for information, do we have to take them out, or do I have to have a motion in order to talk about them? Okay. Is there one specific or both?
No, I don't have any questions on them. The only question I have, the ones that have been approved by the CAO, there's a full report there, and I just wondered, are there reports for the ones approved by the Chief Financial Officer? That your reports normally indicate what budget is and all that. So are there reports for those? There were 3 pages, I think 13 items.
Okay, well, before we answer that question, because we're going to be discussing them, we need to have a motion to bring them out of information. So it's both of them, right? 6 and 7? You're talking about 6 and 7?
No, 7 is fine. I just wondered if there were similar type reports for 6.
Okay. So those in favor of discussing number 6? All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. So I'm not sure what staff wants to answer that question. Mr. Lautenbach?
Through the chair, this report, which is the approval of tenders that are between 100,000 and 750,000, so according to the purchasing bylaw, we're required to bring a quarterly report back based on summary information, which is the intent of the bylaw. There's internal memos that we do review to check that there is sufficient financial funding to proceed, that it is within budget to allow the director to approve those purchases. But they're not attached with the actual council agenda as part of the quarterly report.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, and I realize that you're doing what you've got delegated authority. I just wondered if there were somewhere filed in our, where all the material is, that someone could go in and look at a report for a particular item, that's all. I gather there is...
Through the chair, as I mentioned, there is internal memo, so that is just like the actual report that you do see. So there are those internal reports that are filed and that they do review, staff review, to make sure that is within budget to allow delegated authority to take place and award based on that threshold.
Okay, and those reports are not publicly listed any place, like with all our other reports that come to committee and council.
Through the chair, that's correct. They are not.
Okay, I gather if someone were really interested, they could ask staff for a copy of the. Yeah. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Fernandez.
Yeah, I have a question on the tender on page 7-9, which is in the 7 group, under the 7s.
All right, so we have a motion to take number 7 out of information. Those in favor? Opposed? Sorry, are those in favor? Carries.
Yeah, just because I noticed that, and this has come to the Environment Committee, we actually had this as part of the tour on the infrastructure that we did. But it was only one qualified tender, so I thought under our new regs for tenders that it should be coming to council. It didn't because it wasn't over budget, or it didn't because of other reason? Because there's two qualifications that we had said that they should be coming to council, and this time it didn't.
Mr. Lautenbach.
Through the chair, this report is CAO approval that happens during the summer recess when council is not available for tenants to come forward. So the requirement being is if it's within budget, it would be approved as part of that, and then come as part of this report when council reconvenes. So that's why the report's coming now, with the reports that are attached that have been signed off during that period of the summer recess.
Okay, so I understand that it is, happened during summer recess, but it's just that it's such a large amount. It's, $3 million. I really would have liked to have had a little bit of oversight from council on it. I mean, it's done. Certainly, I hope that it stays within budget and doesn't go over. It's a huge project, so.
All right, there's no further questions. Mr. Clerk, are there any additional items? All right, then move. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Davies that the proceedings and the recorded pecuniary interests and conflicts taken in the meeting of the Committee of the Whole held this date, attached hereto and forming part of these minutes, are hereby adopted and confirmed.
All those in favor? Opposed? That's carried. It's been moved by Councillor Davey, seconded by Councillor Singh, that the bylaws listed on the agenda for third reading be taken as read a third time, be finally passed and numbered serially by the clerk. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried. And it's been moved by Councillor Etherington. He's been kind of quiet tonight, that we now adjourn. All in favor? Opposed? That's carried.